The Walking Dead and all associated images are property of Robert Kirkman, AMC, and all other respective owners and creators. All footage and images in this video have been used for a critique parody under fair use. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. I know which Walking Dead character is going to go. Watch this video if you care to know. Eeny, meeny, miny. Hey there everybody, I'm Party God Douglas, and this is One True Theory, the Midnight Geeks' personal playground of off-the-wall theorizing and real, linear thinking. On today's agenda, we cover one of the most controversial finales in television show history. No, not that one. No, not that one either. I'm talking about this one. Now, The Walking Dead is one of our favorite series here at the Midnight Geeks, at least for a few of us here in this group, and we have two things to say about this finale. At one, it was incredibly brilliant. It puts the audience in the final moments of one of our characters' heads until their grisly, untimely, gruesome death. But the second point is, come on, AMC! We all know what was happening at the end of this season. Even people who were just watching the show and not reading the comics definitely heard about what was happening. Gah! Why on earth would you pull this stunt and not tell us who bit the bullet? Bat in the season finale. Well, Midnighters, I'm here to tell you that this mystery is not as mysterious as one might seem. As long as you're willing to take a good, long, hard look at the facts. Now, to tackle this frustrating conundrum, we will have to go through the entire roster of characters who were there at the scene of the crime to find out who came out of this situation with a good head on their shoulders. I'm sorry, was that too soon? Anyways, in this breakdown, we will primarily be using evidence we find in the show and in the Walking Dead comics, since the show is based off of this material. We will also be using some common literary logic to see if it makes sense from a storytelling perspective, because let's be real, if you're going to make a TV show, it has to make sense from a storytelling perspective. And with all this combined, we will be able to successfully determine which one of our hardened badasses got the good side of everyone's favorite bat, Lucille. Now first, we have to determine who was there. The list goes as such: Rick, Carl, Michonne, Abraham, Sasha, Rosita, Eugene, Aaron, Maggie, Glenn, and Daryl. Woo! That's a long list. I hope you packed your popcorn and soda, because you are in here for a feature-length film on deciphering who died in the season finale of a TV show you may or may not watch. Right off the bat, get it? Bat? Anyway, right off the bat, we get a distinct clue about who Negan killed, or rather, the sex/gender of the person he kills. If you listen distinctly to the audio of the scene where Negan comes up the bat, after the first blow, we can hear the character being hit. More importantly, we can hear the character being hit's breathing. This seems like a trivial, unimportant fact until you consider the pitch of breathing being exhaled. If you listen closely, the pitch of breathing is quite low. Now, although it can vary from person to person, most typically the people with the lowest pitches in their tone are males. So, this would completely eliminate almost half of our cast. It would eliminate all of the female characters. So that is 50%, because none of the female characters were killed off by Negan in this scene. So have no fear, Rashone shippers, because your ship is still very much afloat, and I approve. Which is good, because I've been calling it Rashone since season 5. No lie, guys, you can ask any of my friends. They will tell you they were annoyed the entire time. And with that, we have nearly our entire cast gone, and we're nearly halfway through our video, pretty much. Relatively speaking from the roster, not really from the length, because we still got a lot of in-depth discussion for all the rest of the characters. We still have 6 characters who might have been cosplaying as a baseball to go along with Negan's baseball bat theme. Of these 6 remaining characters, we can easily remove 2 more without really looking too far. Negan, in fact, does this work for us in the very same scene where he says, and I quote, "If anybody moves, rip the boy's other eye out and feed it to his father." This naturally rules out 2 characters. Rick Grimes, our main character, and Carl Grimes, his son. These two were pretty much obviously not killed, even with the cliffhanger of no one is safe. I guess can still apply since AMC often breaks away from the Walking Dead comic canon for its viewing audience, but with this line, we are down 2 more contestants. Thank you, Negan. You know, when you look past the brutal, murdering, psychopathic side, there really is a swell guy hidden under there. Now we go to our last remaining contestants. Aaron, Glenn, Daryl, Abraham, and Eugene. First, we will tackle Aaron. Aaron, out of these 4, is the least likely to be killed. 1, his story just isn't at a point where it can end. Aaron has yet to fully become the person he needs to become. The most we know about Aaron is that he's a recruiter for the Alexandria Safe Zone and that he is gay. And honestly, killing Aaron off will only serve to alienate the LGBTQA community from the show even further, provided it wasn't already alienated after AMC arrowed Denise to die in the place of someone else on their list, so he could continue spouting golden dialogue like this.
When you were pouring the Bisquick, you trying to make pancakes?
Aaron would not be the one being killed off because he still has so much further to go as a character, and his death at this point in time will do a combination of not really affect one part of the audience while also possibly alienating an entire other section of it. Aaron also doesn't have a strong connection to any of the main characters. Don't get me wrong. They'll still be pissed and upset, but will they be nearly as pissed or upset if one of their longtime members were killed as comparison? Doubtfully. With that, we move on to our next case study. Daryl Dixon. This reasoning is actually very simple. There's actually only one point to it. If Daryl dies, we riot. And AMC does not have the budget to be held responsible for their destruction of entire riot. No, jokes aside, the sentiment of Daryl dies, we riot probably doesn't reach the AMC writing team, and I think Robert Kirkman might feed on that hate, sort of like George R.R. Martin. Anyways, Daryl Dixon has been a fan favorite ever since his introduction in Season 1. Daryl has won us over with his tolerable and entertaining redneckisms and generalized resourcefulness in the apocalypse. Really helps that his toxic brother left the team quicker than the plot of Season 1 left the minds of Walking Dead fans. All jokes aside, Daryl Dixon is an incredibly safe character for 2 reasons mainly. The first one is as recent as Season 6's penultimate episode where Daryl's fate is left on a cliffhanger after Dwight shoots him and quietly states, "You'll be alright." It would be very bad writing to kill off a character whose fate you just recently left in the dark last episode. It would leave the audience not only angry, but disappointed since they suffered a week wondering if this character was alive, just for him to be alive but to be killed 5 minutes later after the bad guy randomly chooses someone to die. But more importantly is reason 2. Daryl has been open for another storyline, and this storyline is a rivalry with Negan's right-hand man, Dwight. Now, Dwight's a funny character because he's a character who comes from the comic, but I think it is more important to note that he's a character that comes from the comics who is meant to be an XP of Daryl from the show. Don't believe me? Check it out. I mean, look at this. See how both characters share 90% of their physical appearances? Medium length dark hair, the wispy facial hair, the signature vest and jeans combo, and both of their signature weapons are crossbows? Oh, Jesus. This is a coincidence? I think not. The premiere date of AMC's The Walking Dead was October 31st. 2010. Dwight's introduction in issue 98 of The Walking Dead comics was on May 30th, 2012. Over 2.5 years later. What does this have to do with the finale? Well, Dwight in the show acts drastically different from Dwight of the comics. In the comics, Dwight is a little bit more solemn. He's a man of few words, and he serves under Negan, but as we learn, he holds a great deal of resentment for Negan and even helps Rick overthrow him. I'm not saying Dwight in the show doesn't feel the same way, but the Dwight in the show is almost more sadistic to his comic counterpart. He smiles more while he works, doing the killing, doing all this other stuff, and he seems almost ecstatic to be doing what he's doing in The Saviors now. When we saw him earlier, he was not quite the same. If nothing else, he has a vindictive attitude towards Daryl, and Daryl feels very similarly. So it would make very little sense for Negan to kill Daryl because it would take away from Daryl's character by not allowing him and Dwight to solve their conflict against each other. Daryl has to kill Dwight, or Dwight has to kill Daryl. It's their character dynamic. It's what AMC's building up with this. It's what AMC and Robert Kirkman have been building up when they made Dwight in the comics to bring him into the show. It's just perfect. Like, here's my evil twin. I gotta fight him. Now that was lengthy, but it was necessary. Now we move on to Eugene. Eugene's reasoning also boils down to 2 points. First, the climatic moment where Eugene drives off in order to buy the group time. But possibly die in an obvious red herring to attract attention away from who could die. I even found myself questioning for a moment, is Eugene gonna die? But I remembered point 2. Even if I found myself questioning for a moment, is Eugene gonna die? Eugene has to do smart people stuff in the future. Now, I know the show has this habit of replacing people in key situations from their time in the comic, but Eugene, I don't think, is one of those people. While he did leave written instructions on how to make the bullets, there's still so much more left for him to do in the future, as comic readers will be able to know. And even though he has left written instructions on how to do it, who has the time or the patience or the limited action-oriented skill set necessary? There is no one nameable and no one who will be smart enough to conquer the trials that will come up to the group in the future. How can you kill someone with such a happening hairstyle? The mullet's never gonna die, folks. But unfortunately, someone has to get a little battered by the end of the night, and it's hard to talk about Eugene without talking about his bodyguard slash friend, Abraham. Abraham is probably the most unique person in this group because he is the only character to have outlived his comic self in this situation. Everyone here is either alive or an original XP of the show, but Abraham is in a really compromising position of having lived past his death day on the show so he could continue delivering quality dialogue like this.
You know how to bite a dick, Eugene.
Right now, the case against Abraham is very heavy because they have all of the reason to easily kill him off while still leaving a significant audience impact since he is a very popular character. Popular enough to avoid this. But can his colorful euphemisms save him from a grueling death at the hands of a madman? Well, as it turns out, it can! Well, that and the fact that Abraham has literally already survived his death in the comic a mere 2 episodes ago, and more importantly, he literally just settled things with Rosita and started things with Sasha. And although it would be a good way to literally kill Sasha's happiness and subsequently stomp fans, it would be a cheap use of storytelling. You can't just kindle this love over a short period of time and then kill it even shorter period of time. At least when he died in the comics, he was involved with Holly for a while and died giving Eugene the brotherly advice speech. Killing him here would be a cheap use of Sasha's character for romantic tension and a cheap use of his character for romantic tension, especially after saving him from his original death. And with that, I think we've covered everybody. It's really weird. I really thought I had something going on here, but at the end of the day, I guess the meme is correct. Negan really did just kill the cameraman. Mystery solved. I hope you enjoyed this episode of One True Theory. If you think my head's in the right place, then be sure to hit that subscribe button. If you think I'm getting a little ahead of myself, then...
Hey, Tyler?
Yeah?
Didn't you forget to, kind of mention someone?
No, I think I covered all my bases. Negan kills the cameraman.
You didn't finish reading the script, did you?
What do you mean? Of course I... And welcome back to One True Theory, where we only occasionally forget to read the entire script when we're recording our theory videos. And I can't believe I left out the most important part. Glenn. Glenn is the Midnight Geeks' top pick for the victim of Negan's batting average, for more than a couple of reasons. If there is one major reason that really implicates Glenn to lose his head over this, it's because he would be picking up his mantle left for him by his comic book variation. This, however, is not nearly enough evidence to implicate Glenn, since the show almost never allows someone in the show to meet the same ends that they met in the comics. There's maybe 2 characters I can think of, and that is Shane, because Carl kills him, and then Rick kills him when he comes back as a zombie, and then there's the Terminus cannibals, who are technically a bunch of people, but they still died the same way. However, this isn't the only bit of evidence implicating Glenn. There were 5 keys, which all foreshadow Glenn's death by Negan in the show. Number 1. Survivability has to wear out at some point. The number of times Glenn has almost died in the past 1.5 seasons outnumbers the amount of times he has almost died in the rest of the show. And I mean almost died, not been out in the situation where death could occur. I mean Terminus about to slit his throat close, not in a gunfight or fighting off a horde of walkers close. He almost died with Noah. He almost died by Nicholas. He almost was eaten alive because of Nicholas landing on him after he shot himself. And he was very nearly swarmed to death by walkers in the Season 6 mid-season premiere. That's 4 times in a season where Glenn had almost bit the bullet, but almost magically made it out in the end. He's a survivor. What better way to thematically end off his story than to put him in a situation where he can't be saved, where he can't escape, and while beating him senselessly in front of all of his friends. The second point is Maggie's pregnancy. There would be no greater struggle for Maggie to overcome in this world than having to raise a child in this hellhole formerly known as Earth without someone as loyal, helpful, sincere, and loving as Glenn. It would also be very appropriate thematically to take this away from Glenn. I mean, he's so excited for it, and Maggie is so excited for it. Then they have the ultrasounds of the fetus inside of Maggie, and how devilishly evil would someone have to be to take that away? Maybe this evil? It also doesn't hurt that Maggie was likewise pregnant in the comic, but once again, we're gonna nail it in a bit further. The third nail in Glenn's coffin was a few episodes ago when Glenn saw the collage of pictures on the wall in the Savior compound when Rick's group was raiding it. What were the pictures of? They were of dead people. People who all died in the same way. Want to guess how they died? That's right. All of their heads were beaten in senselessly. Glenn was the only one to see these pictures. Now, let me repeat that really quickly. Glenn was the only one to see these pictures, which happened to forecast someone's future death. It also doesn't help that Glenn was forming a brother bond with Heath, who was basically the Alexandrian version of Glenn. The commonalities are too great. They're both nice guys. They're both scavengers. They're both non-white characters. They're both likable, and up until this raid, they both hadn't killed any humans. And there was this exchange at the end of the episode, possibly like a passing of torch kind of deal. I don't know, but it just felt really symbolic. The important part of this exchange, however, is that Glenn is seeing the bashed skulls on the wall, which is exactly how someone died in this episode. Convenient? I don't think so. The fourth reason is Maggie's role since she's arrived at Alexandria. Remember when everyone had specific jobs when they first arrived back in the second half of season 5? That was great, wasn't it? Rick and Michonne were cops and all of that. Well, Maggie was made an apprentice to Deanna because she saw leadership potential in her. Why is this relevant? Because Maggie eventually takes over the Hilltop and is the current leader over there in the comics. I mean, we saw her be a negotiator for Rick's group when they were there this season. They obviously included this apprenticeship with Deanna as a sort of subtle clue that Maggie would eventually become the leader of something, and the most likely occurrence for her to do this would be in a world where she has to stake a claim on her own, meaning Glenn's gotta go. He doesn't necessarily have to go, he could just be the Reginald to Maggie's Deanna. But in reason 5, Glenn's outburst in the finale itself. As soon as Negan threatened Mally, Glenn tried to take down Negan, but he was quickly stopped. This didn't make Negan's decision, but this brought the focus where it needed to be, on Glenn, for his final moments. This is hard for me to say. Glenn was sincerely my favorite character in the comic and one of my top 3 in the show easily, but there's a time where every character's story has to end. It isn't always happy, and this just happens to be Glenn's. He was a man who could escape anything. He was the man who could survive anything, and he was the man who won our hearts in his caring nature and willingness to believe in the good in people and the potential in everyone. He was half of one of our favorite Walking Dead ships. He was a man who had the whole world in front of him, with a family on the way, but at the end of the day, he just couldn't keep his head held high enough in front of Negan this time around. And with this, my theory concludes, and I promise my next theory is going to be on Minecraft. I just really had to get this out as soon as possible, and I know it was like a month ago, but time takes time. Hey there everybody, thank you for watching this video of One True Theory. Was this video your OTT or maybe it was your no TT? What do you think? Is Negan killing Glenn like hitting a nail on the head, or is my theory a little ahead of its time? I'll be happy to discuss anything in the comments below. In the meantime, if you like this video, be sure to hit the like button below. If you want to be sure to see all future Midnight Geeks content, then be sure to give that subscribe button a nice little poke. And with that, I leave you. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time for One True Theory. For the first topic, we're going to talk about how gems are actually made, the process of putting them in the ground and taking them out. Now, we've discussed enough about putting them in